Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for Imereti Agrozone Greenhouse Cluster Development Invitation for Expression of Interest Industry Briefings. Please submit your questions using the chat function, which you can find at the bottom of your screen, or raise your hand and our panelists will try to answer as many questions as possible. In order to raise your hand, you need to go to the participants page, which you can also find at the bottom of your screen, after which you will need to find the button raise hand, which is also in the bottom right corner of participants page. Please virtually lower your hand in case you no longer have questions or don't want to comment. We are pleased to announce that the meeting will be interpreted in 2 languages. However, due to Zoom technical restrictions, the language channels will have the following allocations. If you want to listen to the meeting in English, you need to choose English channel. But if you want to listen to the meeting in Georgian, you will need to choose French channel. Please speak slowly and clearly during the Q&A session for the translation purposes. Thank you for understanding. We hope you find the industry briefings informative, engaging, and insightful. Also, please note that this Zoom session will be recorded and shared via the IAS EOI website. For technical support, please either use the Zoom chat function or call or WhatsApp the number indicated below. Thank you. And now I will give my word to the director of Imereti Agrozone, Mr. Archibald.
Let me greet you all, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you ever so much for finding time to attend this meeting, our sector briefing, which is the 3rd in a row. And this meeting today is all about ancillary businesses. We have held 2 sector briefings already. One was focused on HTDC, the Training and Demo Center, and the other one was for the farmers, investors in the greenhouse cluster. We are discussing ancillary businesses today, as I mentioned, and as for questions, could you please once again get exposed to the greenhouse cluster development project? Next slide, please. You see on the slide the topics that we'll be covering today. I won't list them all because we will be going through these slides individually. I will speak about some and others will be elaborated by our experts. Sandro, next slide, please. This is our panel members. Today we have the first deputy minister and other officials of the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Agriculture, other line ministries, our consultants and experts. Next slide, please. Now, IAS is focused on greenhouse development cluster. That was the initial aim and goal of its incorporation, of its establishment. It was initiated by the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Agriculture. 100% owner of IAS is the Rural Development Agency, which is one of the subsidiaries of the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Agriculture. Now, Rural Development Agency is the government agency which does perform under the government and donor funding, and it implements various programs. Some of you may have been exposed to this. This may be concessional agro loan and lending program, agri-insurance program, Plant Your Future, a program branded like this. Also, co-financing for machinery, processing industry, co-financing, and many similar projects that are implemented by the Rural Development Agency. As I mentioned already, IAS was incorporated by the Rural Development Agency. It's 100% owner of IAS, and within this cluster of greenhouse development, We have started intensively from last autumn when we had international contest to announce the winners of consultancy firms. And the selected winner is Joe Holding and Casby Holding Consortium, Georgian Dutch consultancy firm that is assisting us heavily, and it is their great news that we are doing what we are today. And this slide lists all the services that will be delivered by ES, but we will be focusing on them individually later on. Next slide, please, Sandra. As I mentioned, next slide still, and I'll cover this one there. As I mentioned, the initiator of this project is the Minister of Environment, Protection and Agriculture, and we have enjoyed huge support of the government. It's manifested in the following. We have a steering committee established by the government. Chairman of the steering committee is the first Deputy Minister of Environmental Protection and Agriculture, Gela Hanishvili, and the committee includes Deputy Ministers of Economy, David Falabelishvili, from the Ministry of Finance, Georgi Kakauridze, from the Ministry of Infrastructure, Zia Georgopiani, Deputy Minister, from the Ministry of Justice, Akaki Sagirashvili, Deputy Minister, Otsar Samugia, Deputy Minister of Environmental Protection and Agriculture, and Rural Development Agency official Ilya Tavakashvili and his first deputy, Patsulaya. And steering committee also has ES management and consultancy firm experts, both domestic and international. Every decision that we do for the development of ES, and there are many, we have undergo under the steering committee. We have had 4 meetings of the steering committee. Every decision is cleared with them. We have a huge legitimation from the Minister of, from the government to carry out all these projects and decisions that we have had or plan to do for future, including this one. This is non-legally binding expression of interest. The next slide, please. You may well be aware that we are carrying out this project in Imereti. Imereti is located in West Georgia, and namely in Imereti, as you see on the map, in Imereti we have 2 land parcels in 2 different municipalities, 220,000. These are Tsaltubu and Baghdati municipalities. Imereti region has been selected for this particular project for its outstanding climate conditions. During Soviet times, it is known for its horticulture. Next slide. This is Baghdati and Tsaltubu municipalities. You see the land parcels that are located on this map. We have 2 land plots in Tsaltubu of various sizes, in Baghdati, this particular one, and the latter is 220 hectares. We will be having development of our greenhouse clusters. Next slide, please. Here on this slide, we depict in detail our locations. I want to stress there's particular location for logistic purposes. You may well be aware that the output of these greenhouse clusters will be partially sold for the domestic market to meet the domestic demand, and most of it will be sold for exports. So it's utterly important to have the infrastructure that we have around our land plots and land parcels, and they are Kutaisi International Airport, which is within 4 kilometers from the Tsaltubu land parcel. international airport. We're having negotiations with the Kutaisi International Airport to get us a cargo terminal, the area for cargo terminal to produce agro production. We have our land parcels very closely located with land lines, railways, and the close proximity with marine ports. We'll see that proximity at the following slide. It's within 100 kilometers from Poti port and 130 kilometers to Batumi port. Sandro, please, next slide. This is the proximity with marine ports of Batumi and Poti. So it's within 2 hours drive from our land parcels. Next one, please. As I mentioned, now what is the concept of the EAS? These land parcels that we presented, 220 hectares, the government commits to develop every core infrastructure that are necessary for the greenhouse and ancillary businesses to operate properly. What are we talking about? This infrastructure are external and internal roads, depending on the facility. And that's been planned and blueprinted. Everyone who has seen this additional information that we have given access to what type of roads are required to those facilities. These are 10 meters, 7 meter, 5 meters in width. External and internal will have safety and security covered. We will have all these fenced out. We will have surveillance cameras all around. Also, we'll have infrastructure arranged to have natural gas and power energy supply to each subscriber. Each land plot will have the relevant volume of natural gas and power installed and the supply. Also, we'll have draining and irrigation systems, sewage systems, which was non-existent in the region. Now, with the steering system, we'll have a filter and treatment facility. Every aspect that we are talking about will be of highest European standards. Here also, we'll have a training center that I'll cover later on, and of course, logistics and sales center. All these infrastructure points, next slide, all these facilities will be operated by EAS. We will have one-stop shop principle for every businesses operating here that are essential. This will be the maintenance and service of all this infrastructure, import and export document processing, certification for domestic and international markets. Also, we'll have financial and legal services rendered. I did mention that access to power energy will be provided. We also have covered waste management as a centralized service. We'll have technical and agricultural technology consultancy. And as I mentioned, training center, which is so important for the development of businesses that we plan to develop here, starting from the labor force qualifications for greenhouses or any other core activity that may be logistics and sales or any ancillary services that will be required locally. Next slide, please. Of course, these services will not be free of charge. All these services will be priced adequately. to make sure that these services are sustainable. EAS is not for profit. Our goal is to make sure that a greenhouse cluster is created to service all these services that I mentioned, that will be provided with one-stop shop principle. And all these fees will be basic to make sure that company keeps operational and these services are permanent delivered. Next slide, please. Here, I want to give floor to our expert, Carl Spears. Floor is yours, Carl.
Thank you, Archil, and a warm welcome to all the participants. As said, my name is Carol Spears, and I'm founder director of K. Spears Holding. And I'm involved in this project from EAS from the start, together with Goga Dadjani and Michael North from Geo Holding. So the Geo Holding is from Georgia, doing all the local expert works. And K. Spears Holding is doing all the international connection, but also technical design. And of course, well, let's say the Dutch are very world known about technology on greenhouses. The content first is the business ground, the EAS service business ground. And before on the business ground, you will find many services. That can be logistics center, that can be banks, it can be utility services, all kind of services related to technical aspects, related to greenhouses will be located over there. And for an example, you will need a tractor, you will need electric components, you need, let's say, financing options, many things you need a lot of cardboard or plastics or whatever to pack your product. For that we designed the EAS service grounds. The first topic I will handle right now is the logistic center. I will tell you a small story about how the product is going from the greenhouse to the end consumer, because I want to use that during the coming 8-9 slides. I want to refer to that every time. If you have a greenhouse, you have a product, and that product you will harvest, and after that you will bring that product to the logistics center. The product has been harvested on a certain plot, and from that plot onwards, that will be registered everywhere. This is a very important step to go to European standards and for certification of global HACCP or global GAP or HACCP. If the product has been brought to the logistics center, it will first of all be pre-cooled, and it has to be pre-cooled. That's a very important fact in summertime. That will give the product more quality and a longer shelf time. After the pre-cooling of, let's say, 10 hours, 12 hours, or 1 day, the product will be washed, and the washing will be done by rinsing with a lot of water, brushing the product. Then the product will dry again. And then it depends on where the product will go. Will it be stored in the logistics center 1 more day, or will it be sent right away to a retailer? And in that case, the product has to be sorted, it has to be graded. And after, it will run on an automatic packing line. It will be sealed, it will be packed, and there will be putting on a sticker on it. And that sticker is a very important part for the whole process, because the product will go on transport, and transported will come somewhere in Tbilisi in a supermarket. if you buy that product and let's say we have some lettuce and you get sick of that lettuce, you will raise a complaint, and then it is very important where this salad is coming from. When was it planted? When was it harvested? What has been done? How was it treated? So to go to higher steps and to go to a much better quality, this is a real important step in the whole process of logistic and the logistic center. Next slide, please. Well, on the ES ground, on the ES service ground, there will be, as I told you, the logistics center, but also some agriculture equipment providers, and you can think about tractors, you can think about rotavators, all kind of things have to be located over there. But also, well, you need banks, you need retailers, utility service providers, what Archel mentioned before. All of them have to be there, and next to the ES service ground, there will be located the HTDC center, and that one is really very important. Next slide, please. I mentioned before food safety certification. If you want to go to higher quality and to higher international standards, then the most important thing, most important step you have to make is that you go for food safety certification. I mentioned the step already before, and this is also a part that can be implemented, and the knowledge can be transferred through, for example, the HTDC. Next slide, please. The logistics center will also be a very important connection to the retailers. As you know, we have 93 plots of lands, and many of them will bring their product to the logistics center. But also we have around 900 entities that also can deliver products to the business center. If you could make batches for supermarkets containing, let's say, 15 or 20 various vegetables and sell these batches to supermarkets, you have a lot of benefits. You will make combinations in transport, you will make combinations in packing, and the big advantage for supermarkets will be that they only have to deal with one partner instead of 15 different growers. The logistics center also will guard and watch the quality of the product. They will guarantee the quality of the product. Next slide, please. I shortly mentioned already the HTDC, and the HTDC is also a very important part of the EAS project. Knowledge and bringing products to a higher quality and bringing the growth process to a higher level, that requires that trainings will be given. Trainings have to be given to farmers. Trainings have to be given to workers in the field. In the HTDC, it will have a sample role for all new techniques, and techniques in art of, let's say, greenhouses and hardware, and also technical support in the growing process. The HTDC can get fundings that experts can come into the field, teach the growers. So this is a very important role is there for HTDC, but also for you. If you want to promote your product And I already mentioned we need cardboard, we need electric components, we need harvesting carts, everything is needed and related to this project. So if you want to demonstrate your product on the HTDC, there is a group of, let's say, when the EAS exists, plus the 900 entities all surrounding this EAS territory. This is an enormous potential for your company. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I already mentioned this one. Well, what more is required on the EAS? Of course, if we want to go to high-tech greenhouses or middle-tech or net houses or whatever, we need power, we need gas, we need water, you need a computer. So everything has to be provided and will be provided by EAS. EAS will make the contracts with these utility providers. And of course, if the contracts have been made, it also means that if you want to operate business on the EAS, that you will be obliged to take the gas from that company. And so what I want to mention is that if you want to locate and if you want to go to the EAS or move to the EAS, the whole infrastructure will be there and will be made ready by EAS. Next slide, please. Here we see the land plot, and this is the land plot in Skaltubo. We mentioned before we have two land plots, one in Skaltubo, the other one in Baghdati. And in the Skaltubo land plot, it's much more bigger. It's 159 hectares. In the Skaltubo land plot, we also projected that there will be an organic zone. And the organic zone has to be separated from conventional farming due to regulations from the certification of Global Gap or HACCP. Also, you see that we have different levels of greenhouses. We have high-tech greenhouses, or you can call them also smart-tech greenhouses. We have the middle tech, we have the low tech, we have the tunnels, foil houses, and we have net houses. It is important for EAS that we have several techniques and that we will get different crops that growers will grow. Just to see that we get the optimum batches delivered to the logistics center, what I told before, it would be great if we can deliver 15 vegetables to one supermarket. There will be a lot of added value to the product in that case. Next slide, please. Here we see the Baghdati land plot, and the Baghdati land plot was projected for the more bigger greenhouses. And we do not have space here for an organic zone. So, but also on this land plot, you see already that it has different techniques, different crops. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl. Now, the following clause is about renewable energy generation, and Georgi Ratsiani is given floor now.
Thank you, Archel, for passing the word. Sandro, could I ask you to come back for a moment on to the slide 27, please? Because that's the most important figures when we have to start discussing the renewable energy business development possibilities at the EAS greenhouse cluster territory. You see the consumption figures that are quite significant for the Georgian market. It has been calculated by our expertise team, and it has been identified that up to 100 megawatt hour electricity is needed for EAS, and up to 40 million cubic meter of natural gas is needed to heat up the premises and heat up the water in order to supply heat to the greenhouses. Can you go to the further slide, please, 28 again? For the utility companies, we have understood from the very beginning that the main point is that there are two companies on the market present. It's SOCAR for natural gas and Energopro for the electricity provision to the sites, to show up the layout, the possible layout for potential private beneficiaries to be supplied by the electricity and by the natural gas. We have in front negotiations already conducted and ensured the possibility of the supply of all the energy resources required for the production facilities. But can you come now downwards, Sandro, please, to the renewable energy? But the volumes of the figures that have been presented have driven us to the idea that different renewable energy generation possibilities could be acquired to EAS. That's why we're inviting in the section in the target groups of the ancillary businesses, all the private developers for different type of renewable energy generation sources to consider the possibility of establishing themselves on the side, taking out at least partially the required demand for the natural gas and the electricity to EAS. It's really important for EAS development and for the farmers who are to be set on the ground that the natural gas price and the electricity price is somehow insured at a certain level for a certain period of time, not to be increased so much. We know that the tendency and the market will give its own demands on that sense. So ensuring renewable energy generation possibilities are welcome to EAS, and all private beneficiaries are welcomed to study out the projects presented within the EUI now in order to study out and present their ideas, present the possibilities. Doesn't matter whether the generation could cover up from 1 megawatt up to 20 megawatt, partially, whatever is considered appropriate to the private business entrepreneur that would like to go for the renewable energy generation possibilities. These are the sources that can, the solar sources can be considered, bioenergy generation sources can be considered. For that reason, EAS is trying to do its best to relocate the woodcut forest waste and agricultural waste for the potential private beneficiary that would like to establish the bioenergy generation facility also on the site. Of course, solar is welcomed, and we have enough room on our land plot sites to consider the possibility of allocating solar panels on the site as well. Also would like to admit that nearby territories could be available if there is a certain demand and interest from the private sector that would like to develop the renewable energy generation and especially solar panels on the site. In case of the wind generation, we expect that the private sector would understand, how much wind is available, how much is profitable, and if somebody considers it possible, we'll also welcome them to present their offers either on expression of interest stage, either on request for proposal stage. We also welcome the private potential beneficiaries to come up and set up the biogas generation facilities. As you know, EAS is establishing, you should know it from the website that is, the information available there, is establishing 125 hectare for the dairy farm establishment. So considering the menu for 700, 800, cows that can be allocated within the farm. So within these resources, of course, EAS would welcome any private potential beneficiary who would consider the possibility of establishing a small biogas facility that could supply the hot water to the greenhouse facilities and electricity, not only to the greenhouses, but to the IDP settlement allocated right in front of the Tsaltubu land plot site. Looking for any questions after the presentation. Thank you. Let me pass the word to Sandro back, or Archil.
Thank you, Georgi. Following slides are given to Eberhard, and he'll elaborate on those.
Thank you very much, Archil, and also from me, a heartfelt welcome to all of the participants. My name is Eberhard Brotage, and I have been working with IAS for a year now as a financial expert, building on a more than 40-year career in international finance with a leading German bank. I'm very happy to participate in the industry briefings. The IAS greenhouse cluster development is a major project, and as we all know, it also requires finance. It requires equity, it requires debt, and it also requires the support of a very broad range of development agencies and international financial institutions. My colleagues have already spoken about the manifold opportunities that exist in the greenhouse cluster development undertaking by Archil and his colleagues. And one of the service aspects that I would like to speak about as a former banker is the requirement to provide financial services. There's already a very wide range of agriculture and other businesses in the Imereti region, but we estimate that approximately 100 additional businesses will be created in the greenhouse cluster development. And obviously, all of these businesses will require the provision of financial services. Now, financial services stretch across the entire range of solutions offered by Georgian commercial banks, and I'm very happy to say that we have engaged over the last 6 months with all of the commercial banks. We have introduced them to the opportunity, and we have also received indications of support. So in presenting this slide, am repeating myself in terms of outlining what opportunities exist. But we have mentioned to the bank, introduced them to the opportunity to serve the businesses operating in the IAS and obviously the surrounding diaspora of existing farming businesses with the full range of commercial and corporate banking products. And this extends to the entire value chain of a typical farming business, starting with medium and long-term loans for capital expenditure, working capital finance that is required to fund the production and accounts receivable, because we have identified that for the to, for example, retailers or wholesalers that buy the produce. It will require point of sale solutions. For example, if a farming business buys inputs like fertilizer or seeds, they will need to be paid for. So I would expect little terminals to be provided to the agri input suppliers. Cash receipts will need to be paid in, for example, and we also estimate that the IAS will employ across all of its businesses perhaps 700 or more employees, which will need payroll services, payroll accounts, and obviously they may wish to withdraw cash in order to make use of the salary that has been paid to them. We believe that this is a very interesting opportunity for one or more banks to set up branches, service facilities on the IAS. As my colleague Karl Spiertz outlined previously, we intend to house all of the ancillary services in a centrally located service area operated by IAS. So all of the services will be centered around one location as we call it, one-stop window where people can go to serve all of their services needs in one go. I would like to mention one additional point here, and that relates to the Horticultural Training and Development Center. Carol has already mentioned that this training center should not only focus on horticultural and agricultural training, but we believe that it will also be very useful to offer corporate planning and financial management training support. In terms of company formation, in terms of writing a business plan, in terms of how to apply to a bank for a loan that supports capital expenditure or working capital finance. As a former banker, I can tell you that writing a loan application is not rocket science, but it helps if you understand what a bank wishes to hear, which documents should be providing, how you should be able to explain to a bank that your business will be profitable, because that is in the medium term a condition for the ability of your business to repay the loan. So we believe that in addition to providing services, banks could also conduct training sessions at the Horticultural Training and Development Center to basically help their clients, potential clients, in the process of writing a business plan and writing a loan application, and support their endeavors, their ambition to become a customer of the banks. We believe that this is a very valuable community service, and obviously, as we have said in our evaluation of companies applying for the EAS, also as ancillary businesses, we will evaluate how much a supplier will be able and prepared to support the community services, in particular the training of the occupiers of the EAS greenhouse cluster development. Sandro, next slide, please. Thank you very much. Now, as I said before, the EAS is a very large and also to some extent very capital intensive development. And we early on realized that access to finance, both medium and long-term finance for the capital expenditure and working capital access for the more short-term requirements, but potentially also access to equity investors, is a precondition for the successful realization of the greenhouse cluster development. Archel already mentioned in his introductory words that the Georgian government provides subsidized preferential loan facilities to farmers in Georgia. This is a very helpful support of the farming businesses, but it would not have the capacity to support very large capital expenditure. And therefore, we reached out to the commercial banks operating in Georgia, as well as the international financial institutions and development agencies that are supporting Georgia in ever so many ways. We had very positive and constructive dialogues with the banks, the international financial institutions, and development agencies, and received very strong votes of support for the project. In order to conduct our discussions, and that is shown at the lowest level of the slide that you're viewing at the moment, in order to conduct our discussions, we developed a number of pilot project cases that we introduced to banks, to international financial institutions and development agencies. In principle, we wrote high-level business plans showing how much it would cost to develop these businesses, including exemplary farming businesses, for example, a high-tech farm, a medium-tech farm, or open field farming, or the organic farming that we also provide a special zone for. We developed high-level business cases and outlined again at a very high level how much finance would be required. And I'm happy to say that we found very strong votes of in principle support for all of these initiatives with the institutions that we spoke to. And obviously, EAS and we as the project advisors will be very happy to introduce you to the institutions we spoke to. If you go to the final report that we are making available as part of our documentation via the Tresorette access that was provided to you, if you go to the financial sections, you will find the names of the institutions and also short summaries of the discussions we held with them. Let me go to the next slide and briefly explain how we structured the pilot project cases. We looked at the exemplary capital expenditure, for example, for the purchase of the land, for the purchase of greenhouse equipment, and other infrastructure that will need to be put in place at the private plots that are bought or leased by the occupiers. Now, obviously, this extends to, relates to some extent also to ancillary businesses, although we would expect ancillary businesses, for example, agro-input providers, to operate from dedicated facilities at the EAS, but we would not foresee that ancillary businesses would buy large plots of lands on the EAS greenhouse cluster development. And in relation to a question that was asked previously, what if I, as an ancillary provider, want to sell products to farmers on the EAS? What should I then write when it comes to the returnable schedule, where I'm invited to indicate a plot number that I want to occupy? I would like to say, just fill it in the sense that you are an ancillary business and you would like to house excuse me, house your business in the EAS services zone. So as I said, what we did is we calculated the overall cost of setting up the business. We calculated the requirement for working capital to finance inventories and accounts receivable. We looked at the terms of payment typically demanded by retailers and wholesalers and arrived at some overall number, total debt required to finance the total finance required to finance the assets. And then we looked at sources of funds, and we looked at these sources of funds from a perspective of banks operating in Georgia and their readiness to support agricultural businesses, ancillary businesses, a training center, and also the EAS in its own right. We looked at international financial institutions that are providing bilateral, long-term and medium-term credit facilities. We also looked at lending programs that are supported, for example, by EBRD in cooperation with some of the Georgian banks, where the EBRD provides long-term funds to a Georgian bank, which then lends these funds onwards to businesses operating in Georgia. And we found, as I said previously, that banks and IFIs and development agencies are in principle ready to support this project. Obviously, as I said before, one needs to write an application to obtain the money from a bank. One needs to engage in discussions. And it's good to be prepared for these discussions to explain your capacity to also repay such loans at a future date. Secondly, we looked at opportunities of mezzanine finance. This is a capital structure that rests between loans and equity. It is in principle a loan with some equity elements. And together with my colleague Michael North, we identified some financing sources to also provide mezzanine capital to bridge a gap between those funds that banks typically provide and the total funds required. And last but not least, I would like to mention that in every business, it is good to have an equity cushion. In investing into a business typically requires some form of equity, own liquidity to be injected into the project. And whilst there may be opportunities to partner up with companies, I would like to say that from a banker's perspective, the equity element should typically stand at 15 to 25% of the overall capital required for starting up the business. Yes, there may be opportunities to find equity investors, as I said, by partnering up with people. And we, as the product advisors and IA, will again be happy to share the results of our discussions with you. Very much. I would like to hand back at this stage. Archel, Sandro, would you please take us through the rest of the slides?
Thank you, Eberhard, so much. Very informative, very resourceful part. Now, I want to announce before I announce the Q&A session, let me summarize this part. This is non-legally binding expression of interest. Our process for selection of investors, different business owners, this is a two-phase approach. In the first phase, we will be having collection of interest in advance from potential investors. It is somewhat a study. It's non-legally binding, as I mentioned, and interest expressed by you will be collected for the second phase, which will be an official request for proposals. And that will be by autumn. At that time, we'll be signing individual contracts with different investors. I want to say herewith that expression of interest continues through April 20th, i.e., before that date, you may express your interest. Your interests may be expressed by filling and submitting the annexes. In the annex, you may indicate what is your interest, which blend plot you wish to buy for your business development, or alternatively, you may not need land plots for your business development, but you will then indicate your interest. For instance, most suppliers that we will be addressing is, well, for instance, you may indicate your interest in the development of HTDC. This will be, in a sense, your showroom, and you may present and install your products to not only sell within EAS your machinery or equipment or the solutions, but you may also sell them in Imereti at large, which is rich with the horticulture practices. So we have many greenhouses, even outside the EAS, and you will be gaining a huge exposure by being present and by having a footage within the training and demo center. Now, these are the annexes to the contest. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to approach us, to tell us or to write to us. So the indicated email. You have all filled the Annex 2, which is confidentiality agreement, on the basis of which you gained access to our data room, which has additional data and information. So my request to you is to go through all the other annexes by the deadline. If you have any questions on the annexes, please do not hesitate to approach us or ask a question or many questions within this Zoom session. Next slide, please. One more. Now, on the annexes, let me say that for various businesses, there may not always be a need to buy land to develop a business. Therefore, you may find this information useful on how to fill the annexes, when to submit them. I won't concentrate on this further. Next slide, please. We have assessment and evaluation process. Now, this expression of interest is non-legally binding, and evaluation is very sensitive. There will be no losers or winners. Expression of interest is aimed at collecting data, proposals, ideas, to see who is interested in what, and to see what are the demands of the interested parties. Also, could you please indicate the terms and conditions that you would wish to have when interacting with us for the development of greenhouse clusters? We will be processing over all your requirements, and in line with that, we will be coming up with the terms and conditions for requests for proposals. And by that time, we will be meeting all the demands of potential investors. Still, let me say a few words. What are the criteria that we will be covering? Next slide, please. The government requirement, one of such is to have the participants have experience and background that they plan to operate in. It is possible that investors may not have experience in that field, but they should by all means have a partner experienced or with a background in that field, and that will be filling the gap. Our experts have advised us that in Imereti Agro zone will have consultations delivered at IAS, and will be rendering these services to you. This will be technical, agriculture, financial, legal, etc. Now, the second criteria in the evaluation phase is the volume of investment and efficiency of investment. What is the timeline for your investment? And the third aspect is to meet the requirements laid out by the government of Georgia in its different strategies: strategy on environment, strategy on agriculture, strategy on green energy, etc. So these are the three criteria according to which we will be evaluating and assessing the proposals and express interest. Everyone who will be submitting ideas and proposals by the request for proposals will be taken into consideration. Next slide, please. I guess that was all. Once again, let me urge you to be as active and interactive as possible. This session is to make sure that we give flow to you and possibility to ask questions, so that we have the expression of interest, which is through April the 20th, to get your expressions. Please do not hesitate. We'll do our best to be as comprehensive in our answers as possible. Please, Sandro.
Yes, so before we go to the Q&A session, I will just shortly read out some of the rules. So first of all, you can refer your questions and or comments in the Zoom chat, as some of you already did. You can also refer with your question and or comment by virtually raising your hand, which I already mentioned, but I will still repeat. You can go to participants and raise your hand is in the bottom right corner of the participants page. Please turn on the camera if you would like to raise a question. Please virtually lower your hand in case you no longer have question or don't want to comment. and please mute yourself after you have commented and or have raised the question. So now I will stop sharing and the Q&A session can begin. Thank you.
Please, friends, ask questions. We stand ready to answer all of them. But as I see, we have some questions in the chat.
Yes.
I want to ask our experts to respond to them to the extent possible.
So I will read out the questions in the chat and maybe whoever wants to respond can respond. The first question was about the prices of the land plots. LTD Agro Ilta is asking the question. And
I'll respond the question on prices, land plot prices. You may well be aware that in EAS, long-term leasing or acquisition of land is possible if you essentially need to have a land plot. As I mentioned, there will be all infrastructure delivered to your land plot in the volume that you require for your business. This will be irrigation water, natural gas, power energy, etc. Infrastructure will be delivered in the timeline as you wish your business to develop. You will have the lowest, the closest location, the infrastructure, the connection point, respectively at different locations. Prices on land plots will be different. According to the government decision, we have reached an agreement with the government that sale or leasing price of land will be dependent and announced after the expression of interest. This will be summer months. Independent third party, a reputable audit firm will be commissioned to come up with the prices for each land parcel, depending on the industry zone and the purpose of the land plot. Gradually, when EAS will be fully absorbed, prices will be changing. Prices for the request of proposals will be clear by summer when we get prepared for the autumn, and this will be initial prices. I hope that demand will be quite high, and these prices will rise according to development. These prices will be known by summer. Each land plot will have prices attached, both for sale and lease. Thank you.
Thank you, Archel, for the answer. Now, before I will continue reading the questions from the chat, as I see, Mr. Archil Murwanishvili has raised a hand. So please, if you have a question, please ask. Okay, maybe this was like coincidence. Luca Mikhelashvili also has raised the hand.
Well, let me greet you all. Thank you ever so much for this invitation and for this opportunity at this very interesting meeting. Hub Georgia is my company. We delivered completed projects for agricultural businesses, and we want to participate in EAS as an ancillary business that interacts with investors and EAS, and for the particular greenhouse sector development. On this, we will be providing detailed information to our clients, and for that very purpose, I have several questions. First one, Is there a permission fee for construction, or should it be covered by the investor? Thank you, Luca, for an interesting question. Let me say that as for the investment and construction, the related issues, all that will be covered by the investor. We will do the following. We will agree a master plan with the master infrastructure providers that will be agreed and clear. Also, we will be agreeing on the environmental impact assessment. EIA will be agreed, the master plan of it. If a business that requires an independent EIA, of course, that will be done by the investor. As for the fee, construction permission or permit fee, that will need to be covered by the investor as well. Thank you, Archil, for this very comprehensive answer. My second question is as follows. Natural gas and power energy prices, tariffs have increased, as you may well know. Do you plan, I mean, other experts have spoken about renewable energy. Do you plan to subsidize the tariffs or some kind of concession apart from the renewable energy? Well, let me say that the government does not have planned any subsidies on natural gas or power, the consumption. It will be private business development as an aim. It will not be dependent on the government decision or through the subsidies to make the business profitable. Business profitability should be within the market conditions that exist in the country. Otherwise, there will be no sense in having a private business. So subsidy is not an ultimate goal, though you may well be aware that power energy has been modernized and liberalized, and each subscriber may choose a supplier. And depending on the volume of your consumption, SOCAR is a distributor company, and it may channel gas to the ultimate consumer, but the consumer will be able to buy energy at any market and will be paying for the relevant volume. Understood. Thank you so much. Now, one more question on the master plan, I guess. It will cover this point, I guess. The leveling of land for construction purposes. The land will be leveled for the investor to start the construction. Every land plot will have the road, access road, the main infrastructure, natural gas, power energy, drainage, sewage system, optic fiber as well for a digital connectivity. Land will be leveled. Understood. Thank you. Thank you ever so much. I wish you every success. Thank you. Thank you for the questions. Dear participants, please. There were some others in the chat, right, Sandro? Could we?
Yes, there are actually a couple of questions in the chat. So I will read it out. One of the question is asked by Francesco Tampieri. And the question is as follows. As you probably know, we are participating at the EOI stage of the ES project. For this purpose, we would participate as agribusiness suppliers without direct investments in plot allocation, neither lease. Do we have to complete all the returnable schedules anyway? And then there are examples, but I won't read it further. Please, whoever wants to answer on that.
I can take the question, in fact. I was typing it right now at the chat, but let me respond it, this way. Yes, the project is considered for the agri-input providers, including the suppliers of hydroponic type of equipment. And the place where we consider to offer you to establish yourselves and sales is the Horticultural Training and Demo Center. That's the place that introduces different type of technologies and products, agri-input products, to the neighboring up to 2,000 farmers that produce up to 70% of the herbs in Georgia, and mostly the vegetables that are produced in Georgia, they produce as well. And they rapidly need new technologies. They rapidly need irrigation systems to be developed and whatever. So you are invited to take your part in the Horticultural Training Demo Center proposal, and you have to fill up the forms in order to start the negotiation with IAS on setting your entity at Horticultural Training and Demo Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Goga, for your answer. I just want to stress the fact that I think that Francesco's question was also concerning the technical side of filling up the RSs. So maybe someone can elaborate on that part as well, just to make it more clear.
Sandro, if I may, I would like to chip in there. Obviously, as we said previously, the IAS is a very complex, multi-dimensional businesses. It will have farmers, it will have service providers, it will have utilities, a training center. We designed the returnable schedules in such a way that they potentially can address all of the interested parties, people that we call respondents. Now, the by number largest participant group will be farming businesses. We are providing in the temporary plot assignments 93 different plots between 3 hectares and 10 hectares. So let's say there are 100 plus people interested, participating in the ultimate development. About 90% of them by numbers will be farmers. So Francesco, you are an agri-business services provider. Please apologies that the returnable schedule does not really fit for the business that you're proposing. I have suggested previously that you just fill it in as good as you can. Where something does not apply to you, either cover it in a short accompanying letter to say that you have not filled it in because you don't want to buy a plot, you would like to be assigned or provided the opportunity to operate from the IAS Services Center. That will be perfectly all right. Or you fill in the returnable schedule for the plot and say not applicable because we would like to run our businesses from the service center. I would like to mention one point, and that relates to the policy objectives of the Georgian government, the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Agriculture, the RDA, and also the business that Archil and his team are putting together. Georgia is on a mission to enhance and to improve its agriculture. It is supported through development agencies and international financial institutions. There is a long list of development objectives. And it has been, as project advisors and IAS, it has been our commitment to address those policy objectives of the IAS. Now, as a banker, I fully understand that everybody wants to do business, but we also want to assure that the broader community in the IAS and potentially also in the Imereti diaspora benefits from an enhancement of the agricultural sector in Georgia. And therefore, even an input supplier, even a services provider, and I spoke at length about the banks, we don't just want them to set up a branch there. We would also like them to offer training to the farmers in writing, for example, a loan application. So I would ask you, Francesco, to explain how the business that you propose at IAS can address those policy objectives. And these can be, for example, in the efficient and economically and environmentally responsible use of fertilizer. It can be in the addressing of bugs and other factors that destroy the crop and reduce the output. So if you're providing something, then please also explain how policy objectives are addressed through your proposal to sell something. As Archel said, EAS is a government-inspired business that wants to be self-sustaining, but it also is committed to address the policy objectives that have been agreed upon with MEPA, and also, and that is the benefit that then would be accessible to EAS and its farmer, that is supported through a very long list of grants, of technical assistance, of medium and long-term finance from development agencies and international financial institutions. So
yeah.
on the one side, you need to deliver something in addition to just selling your product. On the other hand, that provides the entire community in the EAS to access the grants, technical assistance, and lending programs that are available from the international community. That is a trade-off between the two things.
I perfectly get your point. That's why we participated also to the other industry briefing at HTDC industry briefing. Because rather than plants that we of course are going to sell, like rootstocks and whatever, we do also have a R&D department inside our company, which aims to provide to the companies and to the third parties trainings on micropropagation techniques and research and development on new varieties. So I think this is what we can offer to YAS project under a point of view of HTDC department. So R&D, new varieties, technologies, and research on new breedings technologies. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you too.
Our commitment to, for example, then open up the HTDC and say, this and that afternoon, Francesco from Italy will offer 2 or 3 hour course on the technology, the experience, sharing that benefits the farmers on the EAS. That is the rough concept that we have. Thank you very much for the contribution.
Thank you too. Bye.
Thank you both, Francesco, for the question and Eberhard for the answer. This was really informative. So as there are no more hands raised, I will continue to read out the questions from the chat. The next question that I will read out is from Mr. Andro Hutsishvili. I think I read out I think that's correct. And the question is in Georgian, but I will roughly translate the idea. The question is about cold storage facilities. Andro wants to know how big, like what's the volume of it and what type of cold storage facilities will there be in the landfill. So whoever wants to answer that, please.
I responded it in the chat, but let me, come back to it with your permission. There are no certain limits at this moment in time for the volumes of the cold storage facilities or any type of facilities considered within the logistical center. We understand that we should rely on and we should follow up the business proposals, the private business proposals that would come from the private sector in order with the wish to establish, their cold storages at the EAS greenhouse cluster. The only thing that we could deliver as an information, and it's all in the documentation that has been supplied within the expression of interest, these are the volumes of the existing products. And we know that up to 70% of herbs are produced within the 35-kilometer range from EAS, and that's the greenhouse cluster territory settled up with more than 2,000 farmers at up to 5,000 greenhouse facilities that produce these herbs, and mainly the vegetables produced in Georgia, all are located within this 35-kilometer range as well. So it's about the market research. It's about the decision of the private sector to come up with the understanding on the volumes and offer it to EAS and the technology they would like to supply in order to ensure their business profitability on their own. Plus, in addition, we have assigned preliminary 93 land plots for potential EAS private beneficiaries as well, in addition to already existing demand on the market. Plus, please be informed, and I just want to stress this information out, that the region, the Imereti region, and precisely the location has been considered as the logistical hub available, to be constructed in Georgia for vegetables and for herbs and for flowers. The research has been conducted by EBRD. It's public, one can find out. If not, we can also support you in delivering the information. The research has been conducted to study out the logistical center possibility to be allocated at the airport of Kutaisi Airport, just in front of the Imereti Agro zone. Now, together with the Ministry of Infrastructure Development of Georgia, EAS is considering the possibility to allocate the terminal, the custom terminal facility at the airport, as far as the logistical facility is considered to be developed at the EAS territory itself. But no certain volumes, no certain restrictions, no certain considerations have been delivered at the moment. We are just assigning the possibility for the private sector to introduce their vision and introduce their development perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Goga, for the answer. So please, if anybody has any other questions, please raise your hand. If not, I think there's one question from Mr. Guido Ancarni, which I will read out in the meantime. Guido is actually asking several different questions, but they all have the same theme. He's asking, so first he's saying that ponics can propose hydroponics and aquaponics greenhouses. He's asking, can they fit to this interesting project? This is the first question. So like hydroponic and aquaponic greenhouses, will they fit in the project? Whoever wants to answer that, please.
I could take the part, yes, and they are the part of the agri-input, companies that are all invited to horticultural training at Demo Center, and already described by Eberhard conditions, where we in fact hope that the agri-input companies will establish themselves at horticultural training Demo Center, provide trainings to the spreaders of their product, because they need to be introduced to up to 2,000 farmers and to the 93 potential beneficiaries in order to sell it out accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgi, for the answer. The second question is how to be in touch with interested parties. Will there be some kind of B2B group together and answer to the EOI and then to the RFP? So whoever wants to answer this also, please.
I'll respond to that question. Imereti, the agro zone, there will be B2B opportunities within EAS. This will be technology suppliers, various agro products and solutions. Our aim is to let you network and connect with each other. We need to know what is your scope of operation, what is your interest within EAS, and we'll do our best. We'll collect this information, and all the interested parties will have access to information on the services and products that we will be offering. All that will be readily available to all the potential investors. So we pledge that B2B platform will be developed for businesses to connect and network with each other.
Thank you, Archel. There are no more questions in the chat that weren't answered in the chat. Even though I can read them out loud, but they were all kind of answered in the chat as well. So please raise your hand or write in chat if you have any other questions. We'll wait.
Even without raising hand, I want to ask our participants to unmute yourself and ask a question straight away.
Maybe you allow me to, ask a question. We have conceived the logistical center and the service space. And if I recall it correctly, it was about more than 20,000 square meters assigned to that area. Now, the ancillary businesses, the way we understand it, most of them will most likely go and take spaces in the service area. And I think when filling out the respondent forms, that's where we would expect the respondents to explain their business, not only in terms of business, but also in terms of what the requirements will be in terms of using space and land and accesses and so forth. Yeah, this is quite important for us to understand. And eventually, that particular piece of land would need to be increased or decreased depending on the outcome of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to answer this?
I would ask Georgi to answer this.
Sure, I mean, absolutely right. We have identified the place for the agri-input providers like a showroom in the demo center, in the horticultural and demo center. But of course, we consider the possibility where they can need some kind of storage facilities for their products in order to sell them out, the spare parts, and so on and so on. And so they are welcome to go to the service areas and hire the places at IAS where they could store their facilities, At this moment in time, we're trying, as you remember, we are trying to collect all the information and prepare the binding proposals during the RFP stage due in the autumn of 2021. So we have to come up with the understanding what type of logistical facilities the private sector would like to establish, what like of agri-input companies' products would like to deliver and sell out at the IAS greenhouse cluster, and try together with them in close cooperation in the direct dialogue with the participants to establish the terms and conditions for the binding request for proposal stage, due in the autumn of 2021. Hopefully I've covered the question, Miguel.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
What I would like to simply add on is simply for everybody to understand here also why, for example, one of the ancillary businesses is considered to be the banks. The banks also don't need agricultural farmland, but they need a place to be, and they need to also express, what they will want to occupy and where and how, and what are the terms and conditions under which they would establish their small branch etc. The same thing goes for the companies interested in the certification business. They will need laboratories and things like that. I don't know exactly what they need, yeah? But there will be some requirements, some conditions under which they would be ready and willing to come to the EAS territory, to obviously service the EAS clients, which we are anticipating in the number of up to 93 clients, customers, but also, because, for example, the banks and the certification companies will have as additional clients the entire Imereti region around it to be able to be serviced out of that particular EAS place. So when you consider these opportunities, and this is what Georgi has mentioned before, you need to be able to understand your own market research, and as a result of that, your own requirements to be able to service. At the, as it is a private business, profitable, basis for yourselves. Thank you very much.
With your permission, as an add-on, just to define the market properly, you have to consider not only future potential 93 beneficiaries at EAS, but also surrounding 6 villages within the 35-kilometer range from EAS. And these 6 villages produce 70% of herbs in Georgia and most vegetables in Georgia. In fact, these people need all the services, not only from the agri-input providers, starting from the very engineering, greenhouse construction possibilities, supplies, irrigation systems, fertilizers, pesticides, all of that is needed for a really intensive marketplace in Georgia that lacks all these facilities and knowledge. That's why it's so important, and we consider it's like, an opportunity for the limited, of course, companies who would access, the horticultural training demo center to establish themselves from the very beginning, because the market is already there. It will be it will be grown only by inviting all the rest of 93 potential farmers, where we have already different applicants applied. And we understand that the volume of the products will grow. With HTDC support, with your support in that sense, we consider that the farmers that are surrounding the EAS land plots, within the 35-kilometer range, could increase their productivity from 15 to 20%. More than that, if you study them out, you will find out that they have really simple constructions as greenhouses with the energy sources available directly on their backyard, but they don't use it. So all of them will need different equipment, different, reorganizations, different, understanding from whatever they have on technologies to be produced, on fertilizers to be used, on pesticides to be used, and so on and so on. That's what makes horticultural training and demo center within that place really attractive for the agri-input companies and other ancillary businesses as well that are invited to this meeting, including the banks, because all these people within this 35-kilometer range have significant turnovers that they would like to pass through the branches that are not available, closer than that of Kutaisi, for example. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgi. Mr. Archil Murvanishvili is still raising the hand, so please, if you have a question, Mr. Archil.
Let me greet you all. Let me congratulate you with these very nice initiatives. I have a question to Georgi. You may well be aware that we have in high-tech greenhouses, we more or less have artificial lighting system. Do we have statistics on the solar, the sources, so that we take that into account? What is the volume required for the greenhouses in terms of solar energy?
Thank you for your question. Capacities supposedly, Carol could be better, I mean, in technical way to tell you about the energy needed for the high-tech greenhouses, but I could come up from the sample business plan that we have designed for years. That includes the artificial lighting possibilities. And we've counted down up to 1.5 megawatt electricity needed for 6 hectare of greenhouse facility. Sorry, I mean, can you make, yeah. For the 6 hectare high-tech greenhouse facility at Imereti Agro zone. Artificial lighting, I mean, requires a lot of light. We have different type of proposals, for example, coming from Latvian partners that have signed the memorandum with years already to deliver their own technologies at the horticultural training demo center. It depends on what type of lighting you use as well. Do you use LED lighting? Do you use metallohalogenic lighting coming out? But it's energy, I mean, energy is needed in big volumes. Coming out of the solar energy, I don't think personally, but it's the matter of better calculation and technical, I mean, research is to be done, that the solar energy can supply the high-tech greenhouse in big volumes, you know. The solar energy that we're considering on the side as the possibility of solar generation, we think that certain volumes, for example, up to 5 or 10 megawatts can be established at IA's greenhouse cluster land plots that centralized wise could supply with mainly hot water. And that's the most important part, you know, in that case, because the greenhouses are the consumers of the hot water for the heat and the electricity. So it's again up to concrete business calculations coming out of concrete demand from the farmer that wants to establish the greenhouse or for the energy generation facility, energy generation provider, you know, who wants to establish its own energy generation facility, solar in that sense. But the room for solar is enough. We expect from the private sector to deliver the proposal where they can fit in the plannings that we have introduced their solar panels in order to count down how much megawatts or how much electricity or hot water they could deliver to the site.
Yeah, so first of all, I have the question like this, that if you have a studies on the sunlight statistics, mainly because I want to count it for the greenhouses, mainly how much luxes I must use in the greenhouses. This is how to say, when I'm offering to the investors, the greenhouses, also I must count the how much luxes you need on a Imereti Agro zone greenhouse. And mainly, if we have these studies, I was having like this question.
Thank you, Archil, for your question. Yes, the radiation is counted down, and you can find it in the expression of interest documentation that has been supplied to you with the Trezorit link. You can find it. You have the radiation calculations, and it was necessary for the greenhouse development, first of all. So coming out of that figures, any engineer that is working on the solar energy generation would count down the possibilities available on the site.
Yeah, thank you very much, Georgi. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Georgi.
Let me add. Let me add for the attention of everyone that all of you that have submitted the signed annex, the filled-in annex, which is an agreement, we gave you a link to our data room, and it has all the climate, physical, geology studies and data on our project, complete set of information. So all the technical information that is available, historic or otherwise, geodesic or geology data and information is readily available in our data room to you. And you all have links to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Archil, and thank you, Georgi. I think Luca Michelaishvili has another question.
Yes, a little bit of a question and comment in regards to the latest conversation about the artificial lights. Does the Imereti Agrozone have the capacity to expand the solar panels in order to gain more megawatts and capacity for more electricity? Is it possible to invest in that, or is it possible to expand it somehow?
Absolutely. Archil, can I take it, please? Can I take the response, please? Well, first of all, let me tell you that there is enough room, in my personal understanding, for already establishing the solar panels and generating certain energy, because we have left out for the maintenance need up to 32 hectares of land, that is not used. Plus, you have internal roads and upcoming roads that could also be covered by the solar panels if somebody would consider the possibility. That's within the ES territory itself. There is enough room if you go to the planning and you have the topographical maps available, including our layouts that are on the topographical maps already inputted, where you can find out available room for the solar panels, in my understanding, that could be used for generating electricity or the hot water. Plus, of course, around the ES territory, you can also consider the possibility of obtaining the land on private basis or negotiating with the state if the state is owning certain land plots and they are available around, if you would like to go for the bigger energy generation facility. We don't hear you.
Sorry, yeah, we can't hear you.
Thank you for the answer. It was very informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would like to give one more additional comment on the solar panels. If you want, let's say, to use the solar panels only for lighting, you have to consider that you are using the lighting system, especially on dark days. And that's when the solar panels are producing not that much electricity. So using solar panels, that could be an option to, let's say, run your daily operational machinery. And then I'm talking about pumps, electric machines, charging the batteries of your harvest cars. Then there is another limitation to the solar panels. If you want, let's say, to generate about 1 megawatt of electricity, that would mean that you would need roughly about 1.6 hectares of land to install these panels. So building a 6-hectare greenhouse, that would mean that you have to buy additional land for 2.5 hectares, but also if you need the electricity, you still need an electricity connection. You still need to generate your electricity. So if you want to go for solar panels or the solar field outside EAS or within the EAS, of course it can be discussed, and of course every solution that is sustainable, and especially on electricity, we are very open to receive your proposals in it, and of course we will look into it. Thank you.
With your permission, can I add on, to Karol's remark as well? It's, really important, that Karol has noted the specifics of this type of energy generation facilities. Plus, it's understandable also that the solar panels are used not only for electricity generation, but also for the hot water generation. So the business model can be considered like in combination, and also for the electricity that you don't use, I mean, the peak electricity, you have a possibility in Georgia to sell it out directly to the grid. So at a certain price, it's a PPA price separately to be established with the state, you know, it can be really profitable and interesting for the energy generation company that would provide hot water and electricity to the greenhouses, because greenhouses again are the main consumers. It makes it profitable. If you use the hot water generated, that is the main product, and you get the price at the same price that you would spend on the natural gas for heating the water, that's the business plan, plus the electricity, I mean, price that you sell out, plus the PPA price that you deliver back to the state, you know, I mean, the electricity, not to waste it out. In this combination, it should be profitable, and I'm really happy that there are certain companies that are considering this possibility, because the land plot, I mean, if you count down, is more than enough for 1 megawatt and even goes up to 5, coming out from my considerations at the moment. And the land plots are available around IAS as well, that we could also support to obtain either from the private sector, either from the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgi. Mr. Archie Murvanishvili was also raising the hand. I don't know if this was mistakenly raised. But if you have...
it was by mistake. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. I just wanted to, if I may, I will just ask one question. What about the biogeneration sources? Can we elaborate on that? Because that also might be an interesting way of generating energy.
Absolutely. Let me take the question, Sandro. Thank you for that question. It's an important question because bioenergy generation is also really interesting for us. Why? The forest cut in the western part of Georgia is licensed and it's taking in big volumes, you know, organized and taken in big volumes. For certain years, Georgia could not define legislative-wise who's the ownership of the forest cut waste. But this has been done recently, and the forest cut waste is assigned to the forestry department. IAS is holding dialogue with the forestry department in order to somehow come up to certain amount of waste that could be available for the private project beneficiary, or I mean initiator, who would like to establish a boiler at the site and be supplied with the forest waste plus 10% agricultural waste, of course, is available on the site and around that is needed for the biogeneration. Now, biogeneration is one of the most welcomed fields that we're trying to support in order to be set it out and established at IAS by discussing with the forestry department the possibility of mobilizing enough wooden forest cut waste for the potential private beneficiary that could apply. And in that sense, let me also stress out the possibility while we're talking about the energy generation facilities on generating electricity and putting up the generation facility at IAS site that could, I mean, generate hot water and electricity from the natural gas. You know that we are buying the natural gas and distributing to potential beneficiaries on commercial basis through the distributor companies. And the price for that is as normal as, I mean, as it is around on the market, approximately $200 per ton, right? So it could come down if you buy the natural gas at certain volumes directly from the supplier, directly, even if you buy it from Socares, not from the distributor, Socar Georgia, but from Socares, from the supplier, you could get it rather cheaper. So these are the possibilities one should consider if somebody wants to get to the renewable energy generation, I mean, business development at ES Greenhouse Cluster. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sandro, do you allow me an add-on?
Of course, of course.
Thank you. I would like also to point the audience to the fact that ES is very interested in renewable energy establishment at ES, because in any case, it would give it a lot of access to international available finance for the project. And in that sense, it would be very beneficial to see interest coming from that sector. Again, also here, those interested in establishing themselves at the ES territory are invited to explain how much land they would need, what are the facilities, what are the terms and conditions for establishment, so that the technical colleagues can calculate and remanage the maps for that particular purpose, to flow into then the information that is requested or needed for the RFP process. Thank you very much. This was just an add-on.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't see any hands raised, but we will wait for your questions for a while, if you have any. Archil Murvanishvili is raising the hand. Yeah, please.
I have a question to Archil. As this is Imereti Agro zone, on the construction permit, is there any fee? And the other question is on, as the demand, the line is conflicting, sound is bad. That's my question to you. Thank you, Archil. Well, as I mentioned, construction permits, anything that is related to construction permits, we will be supporting and soliciting construction permits in the most simplified manner. We will be helping our tenants in overcoming the bureaucracy, but all the requirements will need to be met. As for the power energy, as experts have mentioned, 100 megawatts is consumed, and within ES, that's what we calculate to be required. Within ES, we ensure this as a requirement of the government, because we want to make sure that energy carriers are accessible to every investor. You, as an investor in a greenhouse, your greenhouse, which is an investment purpose, that will incorporate that idea. That's how we view this development. We will let you have connected to the source of power energy, because you need a certain the construction done that's on your part. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for the question.
Can I just add on, please, on the response, on the licenses and permits case, and in relationship to ES and the potential private beneficiaries? ES is doing its best to somehow consolidate all the licenses required, like we know the environmental licenses are required in order to construct, and construction buildings are, required. We're trying to consolidate it within the ES cluster and take one big permit for it, but we cannot guarantee it. It goes the same way as it goes for any kind of construction at this moment in time. But we are doing our best to somehow make it easier for the potential private beneficiaries to obtain the licenses they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Goga and Archil. Yeah, if there are any more questions, please raise your hand or just speak. It's not a problem.
Well, dear participants, I guess there are no more questions. As I said, I want to thank you all enormously for finding time and participating in our sector briefing. I want to thank you all for the interesting questions. We tried to give comprehensive answers, but let me still repeat, if there are any other questions at any point in time, before end of April, before you express your interest, before you submit your completed annexes, you may feel free to ask questions at any time by that time. You may write to us by email. You'll get a comprehensive answer, and that will also be posted on our website in the section of frequently asked questions. I guess we've covered all the topics and we have absorbed the time allocated for this meeting. Once again, thank you all. And if you wish to make a final remark, please feel free. Sandro, I guess no remarks are left. We can call it today. We thank you all, and we hope that we will cooperate very closely. Our cooperation starts now, and please remember that everything that we plan to do will need to be done in real life, and we expect your high activity and interest. Thank you so much again.
Thank you all. Goodbye.
Thank you all for your interest, and please send us your questions even after this meeting. We look forward to hearing from you, and don't forget the deadline is the 30th of April. We look forward to your expression of interest in the EAS. Thank you very much. Best greetings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for attendance. Thank you.